And how's it going, everybody here in the Discord? Everybody here on YouTube? We're live here on PNR. How about that, David?
Woo!
Woo!
Made it.
We're going to be doing some street epistemology. For those who don't know what street epistemology is, it's a conversation technique. It's non-confrontational. We don't debate. It's not about debating. It's not about us providing an argument or counter arguments or any of that jazz. Really, it's just about talking to you about what you believe, why you believe it, how you got there, how confident you are, why it's important to you, stuff like that. How does that sound, David?
I like it. I like it. And I'm excited even though I have a head cold and my family has a head cold. But the internet means y'all won't get it too. So let's do it.
Snow, I know you had something to say. You were chopping at the bit right before we went live.
No, I'm good. I'm really excited to have you guys back. I hope it's a good show tonight, and I'm excited to see what people have to say. So, whenever you guys are ready.
We're already ready. So the way this works for people in the audience who may not already know, you can raise your hand by clicking the little hand icon here in Discord. And then Snow would be so kind to bring you up on stage. And we just want to talk about whatever you believe is true, what you wish others believed also, hopefully something important to you. And we do some street epistemology. It's a good time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No takers yet, but that's quite all right.
All right, we got a taker.
Oh, we got a taker. Good old Chase. Chase always has something interesting to say. How's it going, Chase?
Quiet,
You there,
my
Chase?
friend.
Chase, we can't hear you. Why don't you pop back down, and then I'll bring you right back up.
Hopefully gets this figured out. In the meantime, who's that guy in the background, David?
This right here is 2-Day David. He was born yesterday, and I take him around to people, and he likes to ask questions about the world, and we try to explain it to a guy who was born yesterday.
Nice. Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
Nice avatar.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just start talking?
Well, sure. What inclined you to want to call in?
You know, it's about veganism. I know it's a hard topic, and I want people to, get on the board. I personally love meat. I think it's my favorite dishes are all with meat, and it's a big thing for me. I have to, I don't know the English word. It's hard for me to go through with veganism. It's a lot of it is a struggle, and it's a bit egoistic, but it feels really unfair that other people can eat it, and I am restrained from it, morally. And I think a lot of people are inconsistent with their moral beliefs and should be vegans.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And why is that an important belief to you? Why is that important to you?
Well, I've the thing is, I have I have lived on what is the word, like farms. Yes, I've lived on multiple farms. There's a program where you travel from farm to farm and live there and work there, and I've seen, that's pretty much the best condition an animal can have on a farm with a farmer on a family, and even that's not great. And I've seen the footage, and I think a lot about philosophy, and with no argument in the world, I can at all in any way reconcile moral responsibility and non-veganism. And there's the saying like a perfect man, you can see his moral beliefs by looking at his acts. And if you follow that, in my opinion, you should be a vegan.
Okay. So what I'm hearing here is that you think everyone should be a vegan, and I think what you were talking about is kind of like the welfare of animals. You mentioned like farms, and that they're like maybe so maybe, but they're not like the greatest place for an animal. Uh, what would be the best place for animals?
That's a good question. I think a lot of the animals that we consume would probably not be alive if we wouldn't consume them. That's a good argument from the other side. Like, well, if we wouldn't kill them and eat them and torture them, they wouldn't even be alive. They are part of the, cycle. But I believe that no life is infinitely better than a miserable torture life. And a lot of the animals, like there's wild game. I personally don't have a problem with hunting. That's one of the exceptions I make, especially invasive species. So generally, the wild is obviously a good place for animals, and most animals we consume, then we wouldn't consume, would probably not exist.
Okay. When you said that these animals wouldn't exist, do you mean like they would be extinct, or were you saying
No,
like just
not the animal breed, but well, partly obviously a cow that gives unbelievable amounts of milk, or a chicken that lays an egg every day, that's not sustainable in nature. So in a way, yes, those especially those breeds would probably be extinct. Extinct is not really the right word, because they're not real kinds of animals that live in the nature. They would be just discontinued. It's a harsh word, but it's pretty much fitting. The sort of animal obviously wouldn't be extinct or shouldn't be extinct, so cow or chicken, which also live in the wild. But I would more so say the animals, the individuals that now are living in, mass farming, and animal farms, they would not be born. They would not be, bred, and they would not exist, because they wouldn't even be necessary for our economy and our sensory pleasure.
okay? All right. You said that it was like kind of a good argument that they would never be born. Is it better to be born onto one of these farms than to never be born, or is it better to never be born?
I would say it's better to never be born,
Okay.
because if you go further with this philosophy, there's a multiple multiple moral implications. For example, firstly, you could do the same with humans, because well, better to be born in a torture farm than not. But also, if you save someone, if you grab someone and pull them away from a train, track where they otherwise would be killed by a train, you are now responsible for their life, for their future life. So you can do whatever you want with them, because you're responsible, and from their perspective, they can only make a good, because otherwise they wouldn't have lived at all. A mother can kill her child because she is responsible for her child's existence, and all that. And I don't believe that.
Okay. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I'm going to try to repeat back what I think you've been telling us, and you can kind of tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. So I think what you're saying is that you think everybody should be vegan for kind of the welfare of the animals. Like it would be better for these animals not to be born than than to have them be born and go through a terrible life. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the reason that you feel this way is probably because you have empathy for these animals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I
And David,
consider them morally valuable.
David, can you unmute in Discord? Yeah, thank you. It screwed up OBS. And plus, when you mute in Discord, you can still hear you on the stream. But anyway, so that was correct, you said?
Yes. Well, empathy, I would say empathy is more of a byproduct. I consider them morally valuable. I think human life is morally valuable. That's the basis of my morality, and human well-being, and also other animals that aren't human. To a degree, I don't consider a cricket to be as valuable as a pig. And a byproduct of that, and then seeing justice, it gives me empathy. It gives empathy and anger.
Okay. Empathy and anger. When you observe animals being treated in an inhumane way.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And you may have answered this, but maybe you can refresh my memory. Why is it important to treat animals in a humane, tongue-tied, humane way?
Well, why is it important to treat humans in a humane way? Why is it important to not go out and kill people, not go out and torture people? I don't have an answer to that question. I'm a naturalist. I don't believe in objective morality in the way that there is some kind of Isolde problem solving. But I do believe in the that I have my moral principles that I stand for, that I believe in, and that I have the duty to fulfill and judge others by. So that's just a moral basis. I cannot base that on facts because I don't think the Isolde problem is solvable.
Before you went and did the touring of the farms, being a farmhand for a while and getting some firsthand experience, what was your belief about animals suffering and veganism before that moment?
I didn't really think about it, and also what might surprise some people, I didn't become a vegan right after that. I was a bit in denial after that, and thought it through, and then about half a minute, yeah, half a year after that, I pretty much looked up arguments. I really wanted some good arguments for not being a vegan because I like meat so much, but I didn't really found any, and I'm pretty sure at this time, I would love some arguments for not being vegan, but at this point, I'm pretty sure it's the moral, out of my moral perspective, it's the right thing, and the the real thing that follows my previous actions. And then I stagnated on that view for about 2 years, and then I followed through on that with my actions.
What do you think
Thank
got you over the hump?
Just making corrections in my life in smaller things, like being nice to people, treating people well, greeting people, smiling, and then just trying to fit my actions to my beliefs. And then there was this big I see the chat now. There was this big elephant in the room, and I addressed it. I'm now for like a year vegan. It's not a tasty thing, but it's okay. I'm healthy.
If there was an argument, like let's if there was a non-vegan who was advocating for that people should be able to eat meat if they would want to, what would their best argument be?
God. The existence of God, for me, the existence of God, of a certain God, he has to fulfill some requirements. For me, I recognize that as a real argument. That I don't know the English word. Let me think. I have to Google it real quick. I'm not a native speaker.
Is it like that God created animals for humans
So
to eat?
justified. That's the word I meant. No. If you have a God that is omnipotent and all-knowing, and he uses imperatives. So something that is not someone, something that is all-knowing, like a database that has all information, and all-powerful. So something that can do everything. If that thing uses imperatives, says you shall do that, you ought to do that. That for me is a clear evidence that this being, with all his knowledge, which is infinite, has solved the Azad problem, has derived imperatives from facts, which I as a human cannot do. So I believe that the Azad problem is solvable. And when that being then tells me, yes, you are allowed to treat animals in a torturous way for your sensory pleasure, then I say, oh, great, I'm just a human. I cannot understand that. But if the all-knowing being says to do that, obviously I'm going to do that. Okay? But I don't believe in God, so that doesn't apply to me.
Okay.
And I don't know if the Bible said that. There is a make the world your rule over the world as humans, but also God rules over us and he doesn't kill and torture us. So I don't know if the Bible says you can eat, but I mean Jesus ate lamb, so.
So this might not be an argument that you could even ever consider. Is there one that you might consider?
Maybe it's not perfect. I don't like it. I mean, I'm a vegan for a reason, but the best, I think the best argument you can bring is viewing animals in a way that is not based on their traits, for example, consciousness and feeling of pain, which I do, but of I think there's a theory that out there that says valuing a species from how great the impact of an individual can be. So an individual human can change the world significantly, so he's really valuable. But a gorilla or chimpanzee cannot do that. And ranking them like that, I mean, I guess you can do that. I don't really believe that. I think that would pretty much imply that you can mistreat your pets, which I don't think that's okay. So, but if you really, go through that, okay, sure. I mean, I guess.
Okay. What would it take for you to go from vegan to eating meat again? What could possibly change your mind?
Argument-wise, or just what would happen in my life?
Is there a difference?
Well, it's not just eating meat, right? It's also drinking milk and all the other stuff. But
Sure.
if I notice that I have a certain deficiency, that would mean that I would die or have some serious health issues when not eating meat. Maybe that. I mean, you have to always say, obviously, not obviously, but in my opinion, a human is more valuable than a pig, the same way a pig is more valuable than a cricket. But in the mass that we kill animals, mammals that I consider valuable, it doesn't really matter that much. It's not really okay. And I don't know if you're there's this whole debate about this young blood infusion where, you know, some people say old people like suck out blood of toddlers and, you know, capture them, kidnap them, and it's a conspiracy theory. It's unimportant. I don't believe that. But let's say that was true. And the elites, whatever that is, would be capturing children and keeping them at pizza places and
I
then
hate to
sucking out their
interrupt.
blood.
I hate to interrupt, but I don't think YouTube community guidelines are gonna like that. So I'm gonna have to cut you short on that one. But I think we get the gist there. Yeah, we probably didn't have to
lose them.
put him back in that audience. I think Snow moved him, but I'm not faulting her. That's okay.
Yeah, that was my bad. Sorry. I freaked out, man.
That's okay. It's okay. I actually have a panic button in OBS, so if it gets too bad, I just hit that button and
Okay.
everything goes silent on YouTube. Yeah.
Do you want me to bring him back up, or do you want to move on to the next one?
Let's just bring him back up just for a brief second. I didn't have any questions. I don't know if David did, but I'd like to just ask him how the conversation went. Just get a little feedback from him.
Okay.
And then we'll move on. So yeah, I was just gonna ask. Well, David, do you have any more questions before I ask for feedback?
Do you think there is do you think if you were to take the kind of exceptions that you might accept as reasonable, of like maybe a decent condition or a decent need like hunting or nutrition deficiency, and then expand that to millions and billions of people, could you imagine a scenario at which the exceptions that are valid for you in that way are applicable on a larger scale?
You mean if every human needed to eat meat to have a healthy life, for example?
Yeah, something like that. But
well, I think that is absolutely discussable question, which obviously everything is discussable, but for me, veganism, it's a pretty solved issue. I don't think there's much arguments for one side. That one is a gray area. I personally, logically deducting, I would say probably even not. Probably we don't have the right to kill animals, even if our life depends on it, or kill animals, torture animals like that. But that's a logical deduction that does not fit with my common sense. So I probably think that's okay. But I think you can discuss that. That's a gray area, and I personally think hunting of especially endangered species and yeah, no, I take that back. Of invasive species that make disrupt nature. So you're pretty much killing two flies with one stone. I don't know. I'm not a native speaker, but that's okay too. So yes, maybe if we were actual meat eaters, maybe yes, we would be morally allowed to kill animals.
yeah, interesting. Maybe sometime the next time we host a show, I'd like to hear your thoughts about what disrupting nature means. But I think I'm gonna let Pierce ask his follow-up question, and we'll hit the next caller so we can make our way through the people with their hands raised.
Sounds good, David. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how did you think the conversation went?
Yeah, very good. Really satisfied. Nice conversation. Had those thoughts for a long time. Nice to speak them out
Okay.
finally.
Perfect.
Awesome.
That's how we
Thanks
wanted
for
to
coming
go.
out.
All right, we'll bring SAS up next. They were waiting. They had their hand is up first. And now is a perfect opportunity just to remind anybody who comes up to follow the YouTube community guidelines. If I start speaking over you, that's probably why I'm speaking over you. So just a reminder. But how's it going, Sass?
Well, I'm a little bit tore up right now
Oh,
because you people want to take everything I got and you can't have it because I'm saving it for winter just like a little squirrel. I'm squirreling it away and you ain't getting my meat in the freezer. And I ain't making you no chili either when it gets cold. How you think that?
Mm.
How do you like that?
I like chili.
Well, but
That's
you gonna
heartbreaking
eat
for me
it
too.
you don't want any meat in it though, do you?
I mean, I think we're talking about not if we're going to take people's stuff, but whether or not we should continue going forward. I think that's the conversation right now.
Going forward with what? Legislation? Huh? Is that what you're getting at?
No, we're the
Are
free
you
market economy. We can
Mm,
we'll just make the best alternative. I'm not a vegan, by the way.
Oh, okay. That's good. I could tell. It's all right.
But you know, maybe they'll make a solution that
So
that
who
meets those needs.
so is Pierce a vegan?
Um, I'm trying to become a vegetarian, but
So we don't
I'm
even
not.
have a vegan on stage. What is this all about then? I'm sorry. I'm going back to the audience.
Okay.
See you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're doing here is it's called Street Epistemology. So we ask people what they believe, something that's important to them, or what they would like others to believe also, and then we ask why, why do you believe that? What got you to that belief? Why is it important to you? And questions like that. So feel free to raise your hand again if you want to come back up, but we'll move on to Neon.
So I'm trying to bring him up, but for whatever. Okay, good. It worked.
Hey, y'all.
Good.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
y'all. I figured I was coming up soon, but yeah. Hey, first of all, can y'all hear me? Okay, is it okay? I can adjust my settings if it's quiet. I've been
You're a
told
little
that
quiet, but not bad.
not bad. Hold on, I can fix that. Give me a second. Okay, how is this?
That is terrific.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So I just wanted to talk about epistemic responsibility. I think that it is immoral to believe things without evidence, and I think it's morally egregious to build structures that compel people to believe things without evidence. And with this kind of thing, I'm specifically referring to empirical matters like climate change, for example, lead in gasoline, smoking and lung cancer, that kind of thing. I think that the evidence for all of these things is overwhelming. And I think that we need to build, educating structures that are conducive to critical thinking. And I think that the consequences of not doing so speak for themselves with things like the Discovery Institute, climate change denial think tanks, like the Manhattan Institute, things like that. I'm a big believer in scientific literacy, and I just think that the general awareness in society for scientific matters and methods of scientific inquiry are sorely lacking, evidenced by the way that people deny science. Yeah, I can elaborate on any of that if necessary, but that's kind of my opening.
Okay. So kind of what I heard was it's immoral to believe things without evidence. And what I think I heard was also like to teach falsehoods, which
Yes.
don't have evidence. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think that have y'all heard of the Discovery Institute before?
I think I've
I don't
heard of
recall,
it.
I'm sorry.
I'm not super familiar.
Have y'all heard of PragerU before?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Dumpster fire, complete garbage, right? The falsehoods that it produces just are, it's, for one, the reasons that it produces falsehoods, things like a false comparison between the Israel-Palestine conflict. Like they would say certain things like criticizing Israel for existing in the way that it does is akin to criticizing Australia, right? And you can go through that video, or framing how fossil fuels are actually necessary for the development of future societies. These kinds of
maybe
motive, yeah.
maybe a quick question we could start with is at what state did you feel like your epistemology was grounded and you were working with you were seeing things more clearly than these people you're saying differently?
Well, I don't. Well, for one, I don't think that. I don't know that I am seeing it differently than they are. I think that, like, in terms of the facts of the matter, I don't think that it's possible for these institutions to be honest in the amount of it just like through interfacing with the information, like the scientific consensus, for example. When you interface with the information from the scientific consensus, it's very clear that they'll be telling us things like that global warming is a thing, anthropogenic global warming, for example. And the reason why I know that humans affect the climate is very simple. We've done it before, and we probably will do it again. We did it with the ozone layer. We did it with lead in gasoline, and we've done it with pollution in localized environments. And the atmosphere is largely a closed system. And by closed system, I just mean that very little of the atmosphere leaves our planet. And when we're burning things and putting out pollutants that just objectively do trap heat, we know this. We can physically determine this using the first principles of physics, that they will reflect and trap infrared radiation more effectively than other gases. And we know that they're here and that we're putting more of them in the air, right? So it's kind of like saying, well, how do you know the sponge is getting more wet? Well, because not much of the water is evaporating, and there's currently a faucet dripping on it, right? Now, eventually, it won't be able to store anymore. We're pretty far from that point. Luckily, we're not saturating the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. That would be really bad. But we are adding to this system, which causes instability within our environments. So you can talk about things like acidification of the ocean, or you can talk about things like the coral reefs, or the preponderance, or not the preponderance, but the severity, the increasing severity of natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, and wildfires. Just the amount of evidence that we have on this matter is overwhelming. And when these institutions are built to deny this evidence, and we can see that the funding is very clear and that it comes from these oil billionaires, I think that at some point you have to infer the intentions of the people funding these media ecosystems that are built to serve people an ideology,
If you came across evidence from a more reputable source that contradicted the ones you've read now, what would it take for you to believe that as an authority?
Sure. So if we were to do as many experiments as we have already done, right, which has been decades, if not centuries, of research into the matter, because the notion of climate change is not new, right? We've had papers that go all the way back to the 1800s at the start of the Industrial Revolution, where people would write about, hey, we're burning all of this coal. Coal produces CO2. CO2 traps heat. We have more CO2 in the atmosphere. Therefore, we have reason to believe we could affect the climate in the future. And that's a hypothesis that was tested through hundreds of interdisciplinary approaches via geology, chemistry, physics, blah, blah, blah. If we did as much scientific inquiry, and then all of that came out to be affirming the negative hypothesis that anthropogenic climate change is not a thing, then I would believe it. But this would be kind of like asking me, what would it take for you to believe that smoking cigarettes does not cause lung cancer? Well, if people started smoking cigarettes and they were no more likely to develop lung cancer than the rest of the population, then yeah, smoke as much as you want. I doubt that would be the case, though. You know what I mean?
You want to talk about strategy? Like, what's the best way to solve this issue?
Oh man, God, there's just so much to do. I think the best thing we can do is so far, like right now, we just need to start giving teachers raises. That sounds weird, but if we give teachers raises, and give more funding to our schools and give more priority towards, critical thinking, maybe philosophy courses in schools would be good. But I think that like, yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were.
Sorry,
Oh,
I
no.
got a cold.
Oh, no worries. I'm sorry about that. I think that like it's going to be a multifaceted approach. Probably it's going to start with education. Because infrastructure is important. Alleviating wealth disparities is incredibly important, because when people accrue more wealth, they're more conscious of the environment around them, and which is really lucky for us. Like it could have just been the opposite, like where people, if they get more wealth, then they just become more selfish. But luckily we don't have to worry about that, where people are pretty cognizant of the environment around them. And if we actually start taking more meaningful action towards just building policies that will radically restructure the way we produce energy, I think that subsidizing fusion would be good, but I think that also subsidizing things like solar and wind, geothermal, and hydro forms of power would be good, and we need to get rid of coal.
Have we drifted off of the question a little bit? And that's okay if we did. When you were listing these things off and things we should do, was that a part of a way for people to come to conclusions that are true rather than false?
Oh, I see. I thought you were asking me about strategy to address climate change.
Oh, I see how
Yeah,
you thought that. Yeah.
yeah, no worries. So how do we do things that are conducive to critical thinking? Well, I mean, I think that, taking an assumption you have, and I think that learning about formal logic is good, like inductive versus deductive arguments. That's a good thing to learn. But I just think that a healthy dose of skepticism is needed in our society, for everything. Blind distrust is not what I'm talking about. I'm more so talking about, like, okay, what would have to be true if this claim is true? And then going to see if you can find any evidence of that being true, and seeing, whether it just comports overall with what you would expect if that kind of thing was true, right? So would the temperature on average be increasing if greenhouse gases trapped heat? Yes. Is the global temperature rising? Yes. Well, that's one piece of evidence, you know. Um,
So what I'm hearing is
yeah,
like
yeah.
we need to teach society kind of this way of thinking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that skepticism overall is probably going to be a good thing to teach society. I think media literacy is another really good way of going about things. Knowing what is a trustworthy source versus what isn't. Knowing what is simply a think tank that profits off of motivated thinkers versus, you know, an independently funded aspect of scientific research that produces good information that can be tested and verified. Those are very different things, but if you have good enough content quality, it can be hard to distinguish between them sometimes. And I'm sympathetic to that, but man, like, we're already
Okay.
so far behind.
I think I'd like to move on to another caller in about 5 minutes, but do you
Sure.
mind having a quick conversation about sources and how to determine which source is reliable and which is unreliable?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any specific
What's
questions? Or yeah.
what's the best way to determine whether a source is reliable?
Um, I think uh, I think if it's academic in nature, it's probably going to be more decent source. You know, a
How can s-
.edu. So like things
let's
like .edu sources, scholarly journals,
okay.
things that follow the scientific method, more or less,
Hmm.
or bodies of people that are here reporting on the scientific consensus, you know?
Okay. Now let's
If
say, go ahead, David.
go ahead. No, you got it. Finish your thought.
Okay. You got 2-Day David, the cardboard cutout right behind David there. And he was born yesterday, so he doesn't know anything about scientific stuff. He's pretty much illiterate. How would he know if something was reporting on the scientific consensus? Like, let's say somebody, you got a news source or a website or whatever, article, you found it on the ground, who cares, right? And they say that this is the scientific consensus. How do we know if they're telling the truth or whether it is the scientific consensus? It's not.
Sure. Like if Born Yesterday David was just handed like a random article from some random website, and it's like, it's the scientific consensus that I don't know, lead in paint is not that bad for you, right?
Mhm.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a hypothesis, right? And there's going to be Born Yesterday David. There's going to be other things that test to that claim, right? And if I wanted to, I could go get specific studies. But what they do, Born Yesterday David, is they take groups of people and they learn who they are, where they are, and what kind of environments that they're in. Right. So some people are going to be in houses with lead paint, and some people are not. People who are in lead houses with paint may eat very healthy, and they may not. They may smoke. They may do a lot of things that may affect their long-term health, right? So what scientists do is they take all of these groups of people and they do these things called observational studies. And they say, okay, well, let's see what happens when we take all of this data and try to stratify for all of the things that they have in common, right? So let's try to control for a subset of people that eat healthy foods, do not smoke, blah, blah, blah. And then, see what happens to their long-term health. And if over and over and over, we keep on finding that just, gosh darn, for some reason, no matter what we control for, it seems to be the case that lead is bad for you in paint. That there seems to be this correlation there. Well, if you do that so many times that it becomes overwhelming, that whenever you present this environment to someone of lead and paint, that affects their long-term health, then you just have to kind of infer at that point that, hey, yeah, lead and paint is a bad thing. Yeah, that's kind of how I would go
I'd
about
say the
that.
majority of the human population is not reading studies. Just a guess. And I mean, they're bombarded with all sorts of different claims of facts every day. Do you think that the only way to understand whether or not to understand your viewpoint and to get to where you're at is to read studies, or is there something else that brought you to where you're at?
Well, I don't think you have to like do an extensive deep dive into studies. I think that like learning about the process by which a study is done is pretty good. Like you have your initial outset, and then you have your methodology, and then you have sometimes mistakes happen in studies, so they have to account for those mistakes. And I'm not asking people to read like 56 studies a day or whatever. What I'm just asking that people do is that they really think about what it would mean for something to be true and what we would expect if that phenomena is true, if that purported causal mechanism is true. So it's not just a matter of like, oh, just read a bunch of studies and you'll know everything. Learning science is important. That's why I put emphasis in the education system, that learning about these things is good. But it's more so about having a healthy dose of skepticism and being willing to challenge those underlying assumptions and just seeing where that journey takes you. I think that's good for most people. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yes and no, but
Yes and no.
I'm on a head cold, and I'm trying to survive here.
Oh man.
I apologize, Pierce.
It answered the question for me. I don't know. I'm pretty satisfied with the conversation. I don't have too much else to add here. So I guess I'm just going to
Okay.
ask you. Or you can just go off stage. That's cool too. I was going to just ask how the conversation went, but that's fine. All right. What next on my list is either Light or Tail. I think Light might have left already. Hello there, Tail. What brought you to the event?
I hang around PNR.
Politics and religion.
It's a good reason. Good place to be, For everybody watching on YouTube, politics and religion, that's a Discord server to be at.
Woo woo, woo woo.
So the question is, what do I want other people to believe?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed is that when I'm in conversations and say I bring up someone like Elon Musk or someone who's doing really well, people seem to get really annoyed. And they seem to have this animosity, spitefulness, even jealousy. And I think part of what the claim I want to make, what I want other people to believe is if they would be more open to other people's successes, I think that would serve them in being successful as well. Does that make sense, or do we need to clarify it further?
I think it might make sense. So I think what I'm hearing is you used Elon Musk as an example, and you think quite a few people perhaps are kind of spiteful of him, don't really like him, kind of want to punch him. And you think that people instead should kind of like celebrate the success and like be
like I
happy for
noticed
him,
Neon, yeah, like in the last conversation, Neon brought up wealthy people, for example, and the evils of wealthy people.
Okay.
I believe that this is like, I think that's a bad way to look at it, because like you guys have spent the majority of your years on this planet Earth specializing in certain things that I haven't been. So you are already going to be better at those things than I am, whatever that is. And you can make an argument as to whether or not that is valuable or not valuable. But the fact of the matter is you have a disposition towards something because you spent your time doing that. And when we see people who succeed and become the best of the best in their industry, like Apple, for example, Apple has like a huge list of accomplishments that it's had over the last 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, it came out, in the 80s? So these are things that people should celebrate. These are things that people should study, understand, and build on top of. Rather than, if I can use an analogy, rather than, building your sandcastle and realizing other people's sandcastles are bigger, knocking over their sandcastles so that yours is the biggest is not the way to go. It would be better to figure out how to build your sandcastle bigger.
Okay. I'm sure. Would you? Do you think that there's some people who celebrate other people's success? Is that something that does occur?
100%.
Okay, cool. So there's like a group of people who celebrate it, and the other people who are poo-pooing on it.
Right. Yeah, it's something I notice all the time. Like if I can't. Like in fact, I'm sure right now there's a bunch of people right now listening to this that absolutely hate Elon Musk. And really, no one here knows him. No one here's ever met him. The only reason why they don't like him is, number one, he's a public figure. He's someone who they can potentially throw their problems at, and say that he's part of the problem. One of the biggest critiques I hear is taxes. They always talk about how certain wealthy people don't pay enough taxes. and that's somehow hurting them.
Could you hear any kind of critique of someone like Elon that would validate hating the person?
In my opinion, no. Most of the critiques are ad hominems. They're just personal attacks towards him. They either call him names or somehow try to point out that he's privileged in some way, which, by the way, he is. There is something about him that has gotten him to where he is. But this, of course, this doesn't make him a perfect person either. Just like Apple isn't a perfect company, but it's pretty close. It's a really great company. But Elon Musk is not someone who I think a lot of people really can sit back and say, well, you know, he's a terrible person. He's doing more right now for the human race than anyone I know in my history.
Is there any critique of Elon that is, what's the right word? Credible, legitimate?
Well, 100%. Yeah. I think public figures should be critiqued, and they should expect to be critiqued, just like Apple should be critiqued. Like the, what's it called? Call to Power? No. I'm forgetting the name of it, but where you basically call out companies or people who have a lot, and a lot should be expected of them, you know, where you're basically saying that, you know, that you're making sure that they are not cutting corners and not taking responsibility for things. So they should be called out. They should be critiqued, and there are critiques that they should hear. Like, for example, one of the things that people believe is that there's a lot of billionaires, and there's no reason in the world there should ever be billionaires. But one of the things that bothers me is that a lot of people don't really understand what it means to be a billionaire. It's not like they have $1 billion liquid cash. Typically, they have that money wrapped up in some kind of value in something.
Why is this belief important to you?
Sorry. Why is this belief important to me?
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, I did terrible in school. In fact, I did really, really bad. Let's just leave it at that. It wasn't until I was 18 or 19 that I finally figured out how I could make myself better. And it was literally by just saying, okay, let me just see what I can do. And when I started doing that, I started to realize that I was starting to outwork people around me. And I was starting to really discover the difference between what it meant to be good at something and how to play to my strengths. So the reason why this is so important to me is because I think everybody has a disposition that makes them important to everyone else, like Elon Musk, and helping us to get off the planet, you know, helping us to you know, work on self-driving cars or AI or all these things that we're currently, you know, enjoying right now, or the innovations that Apple has made. These things are critical. And I feel like we need to stop pushing each other down. We need to stop telling each other that if you're good at something, you should be punished for it. Because a lot of what I'm seeing is that people are punishing these other people because of their own inadequacies, jealousy, and so on. Spitefulness, animosity.
Pierce, say some words. Every time I'm trying to think tonight, I'm struggling.
That's okay. I thought you were going to say something. That's why
I did too. And then
all
all I heard was blow your nose. Sorry.
So it sounds like there's some sort of would it be fair to say that with these people who are critiquing Elon Musk just out of jealousy or anger, something along those lines, do you think that perhaps there is like a need that is going unfulfilled for them, and that's why they're feel this way?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I've seen it most recently with Apple. Now, I'm a software developer and I use mostly Apple products because about 14 years ago, I started making video games for clients, and I mostly made them on the Apple ecosystem because that's where people wanted to create it. So I'm used to using a lot of Apple stuff. I'm not a fanboy at all. I just happen to use a lot of Apple stuff, and I really, really enjoy it because it works. You know, like I worked for years supporting Windows machines, server products, email products in an enterprise setting. And though I'll always look back fondly on that time, I don't miss having to fix Windows machines anymore. I like coming to my Apple machine and turning it on, and it just works.
Sure.
It's wonderful. And I can create video
I think
games for
we-
clients.
I think we may have drifted off the question here. I think I asked, I'm sorry for cutting you off there. I know you like your Apple products, and Apple products are great.
I do too.
But so these people who are critiquing Elon Musk out of jealousy or anger
Or Apple,
or whatever,
yeah.
or Apple, yeah, whichever, whoever. And I think you agreed that there was a need that was going unfulfilled.
Yeah,
do you think that
there's a
was-
need
that
going
is?
unfulfilled.
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah, that's why I was kind of telling that whole story because
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
no, that's okay. Yeah, that need that's going unfulfilled is because there's a lot of luck involved in getting to where you need to be. Like I'm still not where I want to be, but I was able to, take advantage of an industry at the right time and do that. I think there's a lot of luck involved in where Elon is. I don't think that things purely just happen. People don't just purely make things happen. But I mean, they can if they never give up, if they never quit. I've never been a big fan of Kanye, but I watched a documentary about him, and man, everybody put barriers in front of him, and he never gave up. That's why he succeeded. So these people who are criticizing, yeah, they're missing something because they don't know how to make their life work. They don't know how to get to the next level. And so rather than dealing with that fact, they would rather attack those who are than deal with their own shortcomings. That's my theory.
Okay.
And this is why I want them to believe in celebrating other people's successes. Because number one, it feels good. Two, you can actually network and develop relationships with these people and learn something from them.
Sure.
And three, you can finally give up and let go of the hate bags that you've been carrying around for years because of things in your life that haven't worked.
At what point does something go from a critique to a hate bag? How can you have a legitimate critique of something?
You can hear it. I think you can hear it like when people start using ad homs. When they start calling you names. Like they call Elon Musk, stupid or any other name, or they call people who use Apple a fanboy.
So while you think that is like impractical, like it doesn't move the conversation, doesn't offer critiques.
Exactly.
But if you were presented with actual hardships of like a power dynamic between that, if you saw that the things that someone was doing, even though they were doing a lot of good, was also doing a lot of bad, wouldn't you want to also critique those things too?
I'm not sure if I 100% understand what you mean. Like, do you mean if I saw Apple doing something bad, would I critique them or Elon Musk?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is just a hard claim to kind of explore, because it's kind of just saying, people should not be jealous, and but it's also there are people, if you came across something that, if somebody were to look at your success and say, well, I mean, he had a better opportunity in this because he knew the right people, or he was introduced by this person. I mean, those could be valid critiques without being ad hominem. So at what level do you want people to change like this? I mean, just stop that ad hominems.
Yeah, I mean, ad hominems, I mean, like you pointed out, are not very useful.
Cool.
Pointing out, how someone got to a particular place, be it by luck or whatever, I think that's perfectly fine. Because again, I think the key to success is just never giving up, constantly taking your shot, and just keep moving forward. But if you can celebrate other people's successes along the way, I think that can free you up from, first of all, not feeling all of the negative feelings that one would feel.
Yeah.
And
you said that
jealous.
you got yourself some momentum. I'll celebrate that you felt like you were really struggling in school, and then you got yourself some momentum by.
Well, yeah, and this is one of the interesting things too that happened with my friends is, see, I had no illusions about who I was or what I was or what I was capable of. I knew how bad I was. So I knew exactly how to move forward. And my friends, they became incredibly jealous and did not like the fact, like when I eventually became a software developer, my one friend said, he pointed out there's a book, I don't remember which book it was, but it's a what's his name? Malcolm Gladwell book, talks about the 10,000 hours. He said that I need to put in 10,000 hours before I can be a programmer. And of course I was like, you know what? No, that's ridiculous. I can learn whatever I need to learn to move myself forward in the way I need to. And then I'll eventually get to 10,000 hours. But he was basically trying to tell me that I couldn't call myself a programmer. And I just knew that was ridiculous. It was just jealousy. It was ridiculous.
Well, I'll give you one last word here. How do you think people stop being jealous?
Well, I think they need to stop focusing on themselves and start focusing more on other people. Because you can learn more by helping other people, being there for them, championing them. You can learn a lot about celebrating the successes of others, where you'll actually develop the networks and the friendships that will create the opportunities that you need in the future, as opposed to breaking them all down and becoming, a lonely guy in Ontario who doesn't have any real friends that can help him.
All right. I'll take them in consideration. I appreciate you coming up, Tel.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring the next person up, and I'm just going to remind everybody that this is on YouTube, so when you do come up, please just follow the YouTube community guidelines. Thank you. So I think we got, who do we have? Koopa, I think, was the next person.
Yeah, Koopa's not. He is no longer in the request, so we're bringing up Dirt.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, they're taking a minute to connect. I don't know what's going on here, but they did it with Neon too. So, by the way, I hope you feel better, David.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it's through the thick of it.
Oh, looks like they dropped. Oh, we got Tim. You want me to bring him up?
Sure, why not?
All right.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, you guys, how you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah,
So I was asking Snow because I missed the beginning of this. I was in another thing.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys come here wanting to talk about?
Well, that's the fun part. We've kind of left it open to whoever comes up. We're trying to understand other people's beliefs and doing a thing called street epistemology, and the whole premise is we try to understand how you got to where you were, as opposed to just trying to argue against it.
Sure. Well, let me try to point it back at you, because I know what this room talks about all the time. We're doing it on the side chat. What caught your attention in the news today? What are you excited about? What are you interested in? What made you go, well, that was a really interesting story? Is there anything you can point to? Like politics, agriculture, astronomy, like what is the thing that animates you when you interact with your group?
I don't know anything about programming, but AI has been really interesting to watch the history of these days.
Yeah. It has been interesting. I've been using it a little bit as a graphic designer. I don't mind it. I think it's the natural way that we're all going to go. Just as we developed a printing press and then we figured out, okay, now we can use this technology either for good or for ill.
Do you think that it's going to be a force that is going to eliminate a lot of jobs?
It absolutely will. And then perhaps we'll get to a non-100% employment economy, which interests me and concerns me a bit, where we won't all be required to work. And what do we do then?
What do we do then? That is a good question.
What would you do?
I think you would have to go to a basic income or something like that, where we expand social services.
So everybody gets a base income, and if you are one of the lucky ones who has a job, then you get some income on top of that.
No, I don't know. In order to be fair, just like we do with Social Security, everybody gets Social Security. And so maybe everybody would get, and I wasn't intending to support this point, but I will for the sake of conversation, a universal basic income, where let's say if you live in a city where rent costs $1,500 a month, you get $1,200 a month, and then you got to make up the rest.
So I'm not sure everybody gets Social Security at this stage, but I mean, what would you do? Because I don't know if do you care about this? Like, is that something that you care about, that you wish other people?
Oh, no, I deeply do. I mean, I backed into this because I was just trying to like start a conversation, but yeah, sure. I can defend my take on it.
No, I mean, I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about something that matters to you, not necessarily you're just.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, I don't like
empty holes.
My grandparents lived in a time, I think, before Social Security or any of these things, and we might be heading toward a time where all of the money goes to the top, and all of the labor, or some of the labor, gets automated. And I've worked in industries where labor has been automated in publishing. So this might be a germane question for us to ponder. And yeah, it does matter.
Pierce, any thoughts on that?
Why does it matter? Why is it so important?
Right now, unemployment is 3.5% in the United States. Let's say that enough work gets automated. Factory work, and the work of writers, the work of designers, the work of thoughtful people, and the work of the robots ends up such that we can only employ 80% of the people. And then there are another like 17.5% of people who are capable of work, willing to work. What do we do with these people?
Mm.
Might be too profound to contemplate at this hour of the night, but that was where we got to. If you'd like to talk about something else, floor is yours, of course.
Do you think? Sorry, I'm all over the place.
Should I go grab my can of claims?
It's a tough question, and I'm sorry for backing us into a corner. Again, if you want to talk about what's the best motorcycle, or what goes on grilled cheese sandwich, we can talk about that instead. I just figured I'd come up and try to spark a conversation.
I appreciate it. You know what I would like to talk about? I would like to talk about what is the best way to figure out which political idea is the best political idea.
Would it be the one that serves the most people, or is it the one that competes against? We're talking globally or for one particular country? Because if it's, it should be the one that benefits the most people, in my view.
Okay, the one that benefits the most people. Yeah, I guess we can talk either or, like a specific country or globally. Whichever you prefer, actually. Do you have a preference?
Well, let's do the United States, because I think we're all from the United States.
Okay, fair enough. For the United States.
What do you think the most? Let's take politics left, right out of it. What are the things that we should be doing, in your view, and even to escalate the difficulty, that we're not doing? Who are we not helping that we should be helping? Or what are we not helping that we should be helping?
It's a good question.
Homeless, drug abuse, fentanyl, immigration. This is going to get political. I'm trying to keep it non-political, but
I think we should ensure that everyone's needs are met, and doing that in a way that doesn't make other people's needs be unmet, and do it in a fair way.
Very inclined to agree with you on that.
All right, I see that a couple other people have their hands up, including one person that didn't get on last time. So I think we're going to move on to them. I know
I appreciate your time. Please move on. Thank you for taking
thanks
my
for
questions.
coming up.
Thanks, Tim.
I know racism is rampant. Wanted to talk like a couple weeks ago, and we ran out of time. So I'd really like to bring them up here. Hey.
Oh, hey guys. Hey, thanks. Hey, Snow. Very good. Y'all putting this event on. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you good to be here. So remind me again. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So what brings you up?
Oh, well, it's like, what do you wish others believed also, or what do you believe, right?
Yeah,
I don't think it's the same claim. I wasn't trying to tread on your topic from earlier, Mr. Pierce. I don't know how to answer your question, though. But I guess, and I could be wrong. I keep a healthy handful. I don't know anything, just in case. But I just wished more people thought it important to question themselves and wasn't afraid to. Maybe then we'll have more critical thinkers. I think people go into conversations too much, trying to change another person's mind, and that's just as predatory as profitless hype.
Okay. Well, one thing I heard you say, people shouldn't question themselves, and there'd be more critical thinkers. Is that what I heard?
No, I wish people were more comfortable questioning themselves. I think a lot of the different ideologies and or religious beliefs or the way it's structured, it kind of robs people of those tools to, question things or critically think or to understand why they have that position. And instead of going in trying to change someone's mind, just ask them questions and try to have understanding. And those things, those questions you ask will be questions that they have to ask themselves, and they'll have a more succinct way of analyzing things or coming to decisions. Maybe, I don't know.
Can you give an example of something that someone who is in a religious mindset might do as you're saying here? Like, what would that look like?
Well, I even feel I grew up in the deep south, right, and in Texas. I learned, right. I never been in a class. I don't even know what they would teach. I don't know what the curriculum looked like. So what that for me did was it robbed me of the choice to obtain that knowledge, right? And when you ask questions about the Bible and about things you don't understand, a lot of times it's met with negative consequences. And so because you have negative reinforcement, it teaches people not to ask and just to accept things. And this opens up people to conspiracy and things. So I just wish more people were comfortable with questioning. It doesn't mean you have to come to a different conclusion, just knowing how you got there and why you're there.
I like it.
Understanding where your logic breaks down and being honest about it. Right?
Is there any belief or conclusion that someone can come to that should not be questioned?
No, I think we all have things we adhere to, whether religious or not, that we don't question. We don't even realize it. But I think we should question as many things as possible. But that's just an opinion. We should see if it holds up just for our own self, our own edification, I guess is the word. I don't know.
Is there, if you were to question something that you believed was true and it was something that was very, very important to you and you ended up losing that belief, how do you think it would affect your life?
That did happen. It was very painful. That's why I don't believe in stripping people of beliefs. I think people having different beliefs is kind of natural to our human existence, maybe. But I do think it's a hard thing, and it can cause people to go into turmoil, or it can give someone more clarity on the world around them. It can open up a whole world of, knowledge or experience that they never had, because it did both for me.
Okay.
I'm not saying that that'll translate. Sorry, I'm not saying that'll translate to everybody. I'm just saying that's what's for me.
Does that conflict with your desire for people to be more critical of their own beliefs, in that you're not wanting people to potentially come across that pain?
Well, I think people. I don't. It's not that I think trying to strip someone in that way, that's cruel. But I think you can't really take away someone's belief or change someone's mind. A person does that, they decide that, or they come to those conclusions themselves. But when you come antagonistically and you try to just strip them of that, that is what I mean by cruelty. But I think people are going to do that anyway. I think I'm biased because of my own experience, if that's what you mean. I'm biased. I'll admit that.
Well, I was just wondering if there where the line was, and I'll say personally, I had that painful strip away experience in my life, but it also led to more clarity for me. So, but I also have a similar prerogative, which I don't like trying to necessarily disrupt people's beliefs if they are in a place where it might do harm to them. But I do spend my time talking about it with people who seem to show interest in discussing it.
Yeah, like if I have a stance, right, and I want to challenge your stance because I think mine is more correct, or if I think you're wrong, I think you're supposed to actually ask permission for those types of conversations. Let a person know ahead of time what kind of conversation they're getting into. But seeking to understand what someone believes and how did they get there or why they hold that belief, I don't think that causes too much harm. It's just give us more understanding of each other as humans. And maybe if we start doing that, it'll start like kind of equipping people with these tools for critical thinking that a lot of people don't have in their toolbox. I'm just now getting them, you know. Maybe we wouldn't have to worry about so much cult-like thinking within society if we change the way we have conversations.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm probably wrong. It probably sounds stupid, but that's just what I wish people would do more.
No, I get it. I get the desire to try to build up conversations like that. I hear it. Do
I
you
know
feel
it's
as though
not
you were able to express your point? Is there any parts that were missing?
No, I'll let y'all have y'all politics conversation. I just
Well,
wanted to
everything's
say
a
that.
politics conversation.
I
And I mean,
don't
what you
want
said is
to hold
important
back.
too. I mean, that's you're honestly, I mean, you're giving me a chance to express my value of trying to discuss these kind of things, but also not being a dick about it. So thanks.
All right, thanks for coming up. I guess we got Phoenix next. Let's see what Phoenix has to say. Let's go in Phoenix.
Hey, how are you guys?
Doing pretty good. You know, Friday night,
Good.
just chilling, talking to people.
Awesome. So, Pierce, I think it was you that I might have misquoted slightly in the chat. You said something not too long ago, I believe to Tim, where it was you said you were interested in discussing what the ideal politics is, or how you would go about deciding what the ideal politics is.
I think I said what the ideal political idea on, you know, any given subject. How to determine which one is best.
Gotcha. Well, if by political you mean just how to organize people politically, right? So, how do you go about determining the optimal organization of something akin to the nation state, right? So just people writ large, right? Is that what we're kind of getting at?
That's not the direction I had wanted to. That's not what my question was really getting at. But I mean, we could go there. That's fine. I was asking more like, let's say, you know, some political ideas might be the right to have an abortion versus it should be illegal to have an abortion. How do we figure out which one of those ideas we should incorporate into society? That's more of what I was getting at.
Gotcha. Okay.
What methods?
Yeah. I don't know if I could get into specifics on, say, abortion, but I could give you just broadly the kind of thing you'd be looking for. So I think that
Sure.
where you would start, you'd basically start with a what I call an Aristotelian, but really a empirical, pragmatic point of view. You'd be like, okay, well, it seems like we have to tolerate one another. We have to live in close proximity. And Hobbes observed that it seems to be better that we organize ourselves into a nation state rather than subject ourselves to just nature, the state of nature, violence of every man upon every other man. And you're free to reject this choice, of course. You can go live off by yourself, off by the grid, and people do, right? You could try to find another nation state, but in general, people tend to ally themselves with the political system with which they're born, and they're inculcated in that. And where I think you go from there is you just try to take a bird's eye view. You go back to people like Plato, who had this analogy that I really like a lot. Basically, the captain of the ship and the navigator is the ideal person you want, like, making these decisions. And I think that person has to have not only mastery of the ship, but they also have to know where the ship is going, where it is very likely the ship can go, where it is likely the ship will succeed, right? And so if you want to take a given issue like abortion with this bird's eye view, what you would basically do is be like, okay, well, we know the state of nature is bad, and we know that we have to live with each other, and we know that rights only seem to exist, or rights only seem to be promulgated by a state that has a monopoly of violence. And so since we have all these tools, what is most opposite, or what affords the most rights? And that would seem to be, to me, to be pro-choice, some kind of pro-choice position. And I think that politics writ large, philosophy to a much greater extent, but we can talk about that later, has this very cancerous sort of head in the clouds type mentality a lot of the time, where they don't deal with real issues. They don't deal with real moral issues. And I think that to run this kind of counterexample to my intuition, which is maximal rights, pro-choice position, it'd be very easy. All you would have to do is propose a state where rights are incredibly expanded and every new fetus is taken care of, and it just works better than the counter society I would propose. So it'd be very easy to do. Does that help us?
I think what you said was really interesting. Would you feel comfortable talking more about abortion? Is that a direction that you'd be comfortable going in?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Except people tend to get really like weird and binary around this issue, but it's fine.
Yeah.
People's brains tend to shut off around certain issues. I'm sure you guys have noticed.
Yeah, well, we're not here to debate anyone, tell anybody that they're wrong. We're here to talk about, how you arrived at a belief and what would convince you otherwise, how you could know if you were mistaken. So we're not really up here to debate or anything, but I mean, if I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable either. If this isn't a direction you're comfortable going in, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, if you're cool with it, we can keep going.
No, it's fine. I actually find it like extremely interesting. So I arrive at a moral objective point of view where it seems like on the continuum between inorganic matter and organic matter, right? At some point, value or the perception of value enters the world, right? And I am fine affording a fetus at whatever stage of development that moral consideration, wherever that continuum happens to be. I just would like us to be consistent and have a framework where it's not like the human is special biologically. It's not like the human is special insofar as it happens to have human's DNA or anything like that. I would rather take a broader moral position on personhood. Be like, well, if we're going to say that consciousness arrives at some point in neurodevelopment, be it human, be it a non-human person, then this thing, whatever it is deserves moral consideration, and you just apply it uniformly across the board. And to the extent that people are bad about doing that, right, I don't blame them. I don't feel the need to hold them legally responsible. I'm perfectly fine with letting the person who's going to suffer the most, the woman, and the person who knows the most about the situation, the doctor, I'm perfectly fine with lending them the moral credence to make those decisions. So even though I do take this broad moral scope, that doesn't affect the legal consideration in my mind whatsoever.
What I think I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I might be off. But I think it sounds like you have a lot of empathy for the mother or the potential mother in this situation. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, my empathy. How should I say this the most? Empathetic for the mother, yes, definitely. I think everyone can empathize with someone being in that kind of scenario, where something is forced upon you. Your body is doing something that you don't want it to do. I think there are a lot of lines that I could draw to have empathy with that experience. But I also think that human beings are bad about empathizing, just in general, right? So
Sure.
I alluded to personhood. Just think about how bad some people are, even today. Like I speak to racists all the time, right? Because they don't apply personhood or the same level of personhood toward people of other races, for example. And so to the extent that I do think that in the end, our moral considerations will change along the lines I alluded to earlier, I think that you will extend some kind of personhood to everything from, well, we extend weird kinds of personhood. So we extend personhood to dogs and cats fairly easily here in the West. Pigs, ravens, octopi, because we think they show signs of intelligence. And I think all these observations are correct, and they will just naturally tend toward expanding personhood as much as possible in the future, and so we should look for that.
Okay. So you said kind of like in the West, we expand this to some other animals, octopuses you mentioned.
Yeah.
Should we extend it to octopuses? Is that something we should be, in your opinion? Should we do that?
Yeah. I don't see why not. I see this as just a continuation of the moral instinct.
Gotcha. And should we extend this to a fetus?
Yes, but again, it's all developmental. It's all, or I suspect it is. It's not like I'm an expert on what consciousness is, because I don't know if anybody is. But I think that the moment it is conscious, it would have some kind of moral consideration.
Okay. So I think what you're trying to convey, and this is how I'm interpreting it, so if my interpretation is off, just correct me. So it sounds like this fetus starts off with a certain level of consciousness, which I think you're kind of equating to personhood. And as it develops, as it gets bigger, that increases?
No. So my instinct again, and maybe our language is just poor, but my instinct is that consciousness arrives at some point in the development, not just of a single life like a fetus, but in all life generally, all biology. And then personhood would arrive later, would be my instinct. Because I think that, so for example, I think an algae, for example, I think the lights are on, right? I think it means something. It is like something to be that little thing. But I don't know if I would attribute personhood to it. And I think that if you're going to talk about morals in this broad, nebulous way, I think that consciousness would be a good benchmark, and I think the personhood would be the next benchmark you'd be looking for.
Okay. So I think you said the best benchmark would be personhood, but perhaps that's hard to figure out. So consciousness is the next best benchmark?
I think consciousness and personhood are both very nebulous, right? I think it's very hard because right now we're only talking about biology. We could go into whether AI is going to be conscious or personhood, right? Like we don't understand these things very well yet. This is just my intuition from my understanding of biology, that at some point you have a cell that is perceiving the outside world, and I don't think I'd ever call that a person, right? But at some point, those conscious agents organize themselves into people. But that's much, much later.
So what I think I'm hearing is that in order to figure out whether an abortion should be okay to have or not okay to have, or which part we should whether it's the mother or the fetus that we should have more sympathy for, it all kind of comes back down to personhood and potentially consciousness, as they seem pretty close to each other. And that's kind of what it boils down to, is our ability, or whether this fetus is a person. If this fetus, if we were able to somehow test, and I don't think we can have such a test, but maybe we can. But if we were able to test this fetus and the test came back, this fetus is a person, then how would you feel about abortion at that point?
I think there are very, very good arguments. I'm not going to be able to recite them off the top of my head, but I actually think there are very, very good arguments to where even if it is a person, even if it is conscious, the woman would have every right to abort it anyway.
Okay.
I haven't reviewed those arguments in many years. But I do remember at the time studying them, I found them pretty convincing.
Okay.
So I think that even if it was perfectly, so just because I'm saying that you should grant it some moral consideration, doesn't mean I don't think the woman might well have an overriding consideration.
Okay. So
where her consideration is just, her consideration is just so much greater that she does have this right universally. Notwithstanding like insane trolley problems, like I'm not even going to get into those.
Fair enough. Okay, so we got this woman, we got the fetus. even if the fetus does have is considered a person, in your opinion, and I think what you're saying is that she should have the right to abort that fetus, regardless
Yep.
of whether it's a person, because there is this right that she should have.
Yeah, seems so.
Okay.
So like
Gotcha.
and again, I'm not familiar with the most cutting edge arguments, but it's something like bodily autonomy to defend oneself. Yeah, rights
Okay.
along those lines is, I believe, the language they usually appeal to.
I hear you. Okay. Bodily autonomy. Why should we value bodily autonomy?
Do you want to come work for me for free?
Okay.
That's me respecting your bodily autonomy not to do that. Right? So my right to swing my arm ends at your nose. Right? This just you would if the government is not going to protect you from a state of nature where I get to beat you up whenever I want, like why the state of nature might be preferable. Like our society would collapse. It just seems like a deal breaker.
Are there any exceptions to bodily autonomy?
Oh, there are tons. So, and again, this is where we're going to get into weird trolley problems. So I would actually view the draft is certainly, like on the male end of the spectrum, right? The draft is certainly a violation of bodily autonomy. Like I will give you orders to arrive at this station. You will go off to fight our enemies because the state won't survive if you don't, right? Yeah. So are there bodily right exceptions? Absolutely. So you can forfeit your right to bodily autonomy, right? So you could be sentenced to prison where your bodily autonomy is violated.
Why is the sorry, let me back up. Were you saying that the draft is an exception that you agree with?
Yes.
Okay. Why is the draft a good exception, but when it comes to abortion, that actually that would be an exception as well? Whoop. I'm sorry. I just flubbed up my own question there.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. So there's other exceptions. Abortion's an exception. Abortion's not an exception, actually, right? Because you should have that bodily autonomy. And then being drafted would be an exception. Do I have that right?
So let me. I hate this because I alluded to before about people's brains shutting off. People's brains really start to shut off if you start arguing along these lines. Let me just say, let me start off this way. I can justify, quote unquote, justify any apparent evil. Okay, any apparent political evil or moral evil. Okay, in the following way. Okay, you say to me, I think it is unjustified to do X, right? So violate someone's body autonomy. And I say, okay, I'm putting that on one side of the trolley, right? And I tell you, I'm going to justify that because I say that I can conjure a scenario, I can conjure a world where, unless you let me violate that person's autonomy, right? Two other people, their bodily autonomy gets violated in the exact same way, right? So I can do this structurally. So if you say to me, the draft or some violation of bodily autonomy is wrong, right? I can just conjure up a scenario where, okay, well, if I don't draft this number of people, I'm going to wind up having, or it just so happens that this double that number of people's bodily autonomy will be violated in a similar way, right?
Okay.
So in that sense, there's no critique that you could level. I would just have to invent more and more hellish scenarios in order to justify doing it, right? So in that sense, yes. Did that help?
I think I understand where you're going. Maybe I should repeat it back to make sure I completely understand.
So if you tell me this is universally bad from your point of view, or this is universally good, I'm going to say, well, not so fast, because all I have to do to avoid the charge is just say I'm a utilitarian. On balance, I'm always going to choose what I think is the most correct path. but the most correct path might be in lieu of greater sacrifices, right? So I'm avoiding the bodily autonomy violation of the most people by violating the minority if I'm forced to.
Hmm.
Do you think most people make their decision based on these kind of arguments?
What do you mean?
How do you think most people come to their conclusions in regards to abortion?
I think that most people they have a set of moral intuitions, whether examined or not, and then they just pick and choose from the culture, like what they most identify with. And then they usually keep going until either their intuitions change or they hear a better argument that they find persuasive.
Is that what happened to you? What happened to you?
I think I don't know if I've ever changed intuitions greatly, but I've changed the most persuasive argument I've heard. That's changed many times.
And were you persuaded? You said you heard arguments. Do you think people can hear the same arguments you're hearing and not change their mind?
Oh yeah, for sure. People hear very persuasive arguments and don't change their minds. That happens all the time.
Why do you think it changed yours and not theirs?
I think that some people have more to lose. So I grew up in a situation where I just happened to observe or have the capacity to observe and observe, because I had the experiences laid out for me, that my parents were just very, very incorrect in their worldview. And that just, by the time I was 12, that just kind of launched me on this inquisitive path that sort of never abated. But by the time I got to college and by the time I had solidified my understanding of philosophy and like how to think both openly and correctly, I just don't think that a lot of people have that experience. I think a lot of people are satisfied because their intuitions work for them, right? Just like my intuitions work for me. So they don't have to radically update their perceptions of how the world works. They don't have to radically update their moral intuitions.
Do you think that the only way that people will change their mind on this issue is by being forced to update in that way, or what do you think?
On what issue? On abortion or
anything, but abortion specifically?
I
mean, not everybody has the opportunity to have the kind of neutral position of, like you said, it costs more for certain people. How do you think people who it costs more for will change their minds?
I don't think they will. I think that they'll just slowly die off. So I think that I think most grand moral progress is made in one of two ways. Either you have a great revolutionary in moral progress, like someone like Wilberforce, someone like Martin Luther King, someone like Gandhi, someone like Tolstoy, who just takes a radically different moral position and just happens to be charismatic enough to convince a minority of people, because it's never the majority, right? Or you have just a slow population movement of acceptance, something like what I think happened to the LGBTQ community in the West, right? It's not like, at least to my knowledge, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no one person who like launched that campaign where they were like, oh, hey, this is all going to be okay, and we should all adopt this over the next 30, 40 years, right? It was more of just a noticing. It's like, oh, these people do exist and have the same moral considerations as the rest of us, right? So to answer your question, how are these people's minds going to be changed? I think it's either one of the two. I think it's either you have a great moral revolution in the mind of one person that just spreads, or just the general population seems to take it up all at once and its opponents slowly die off.
Interesting perspective. I think I'm like blindly optimistic and probably naive, but I'm going to try to find a third way where I'm going to dissect it. Not necessarily specifically for abortion, but to understand how people think. That's my goal. as naive and blind as it is.
Yeah, so ideally, because I think about this a lot. So I was talking in the chat, but when I was in school, I studied politics and philosophy, and I was never ever interested in politics as such. I was always interested in politics as it could be. And basically, I think what you would want is you would want almost a perfect marriage of the existentialist philosophical tradition and Plato's idea of the noble lie, where you only ever give people enough propaganda to move them in the right direction, and you only sugarcoat in so much as you absolutely have to, and you force upon them the responsibility to adopt this I won't make any bones about calling it a progressive outlook.
Well, I'm gonna let everybody do their homework and look up those terms. I vaguely remember some of that from philosophy class. And I'll look it up myself. Phoenix, thanks for coming up.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll hit this last caller here, and we'll have a good night.
Hopefully it's a good one.
They're all good ones, Pierce.
They are all good ones. Yeah.
Except for that one. I won't say which one.
And now it's a good opportunity just to remind anybody who's coming up on stage, please follow the YouTube community guidelines. Otherwise, I got to hit my panic button. Nobody likes that.
Goon. Follow guidelines. This is crazy. Phoenix and Goon back to back. This is going to be good.
Don't know what that means, but hopefully it's good. I like good. Looks like it's taking a minute to work.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not letting him up.
Come on, man.
Let me just invite him to speak.
Why don't you do the little SC blurb while we're at it?
Yeah, sure. Have at her.
You.
Oh,
I'll give
okay.
you the time.
So, Street Epistemology, awesome thing. It's a conversational method where we talk about what you believe, why you believe it, how you got there, how you arrived at that conclusion. And it's non-confrontational. It's not a debate. That's one thing that it's not. It's definitely not a debate. And sometimes people shift their confidence at the end of the conversation because they may determine that they don't have as good reasons as they thought maybe at the beginning. So their confidence may shift down. Maybe it might go up. But yeah, it's just interesting conversations. Well, we got a few more people with their hands up. I have no idea who was the first, but we can try somebody else, perhaps. There we go. Got someone on stage. How's it going?
Not bad.
Great. Thanks for coming up.
Well, we got about 12 minutes, so we'll just jump right into it. What brought you up here? What do you want to talk about?
Oh, sorry, you only have 12 minutes left?
12 minutes left.
Okay, well, maybe you might want to bring up the more fan person, because he was actually before me. I thought I was in line. I didn't know you have so you might want to bring him up first.
Look at this considerate person.
Sure, we can do that.
All right, yeah, cool. Thanks.
Kindness.
Kindness is good. All right, it's your lucky day.
What's up?
It's all good. What brought you up here? What do you want to chat about in the next 12 minutes?
I'm just very interested in philosophy of religion.
Philosophy of religion. Okay.
Yeah, and epistemology as well.
Fair enough. And is there something that you think is true about that?
No, I'm sort of agnostic on, I'm like a Pyrrhonian, so I sort of just unilaterally suspend judgment on everything.
What could you learn or discover that would get you from agnostic to holding a position?
But that would assume that I exist and there's things to discover, and I don't really grant any of that.
You're saying you don't know if you exist for sure? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't even believe it.
Yeah. Why do you think that's important? Why come up to a stage to say you wish what do you wish other people believe? What part of that do you wish other people believed?
Well, I don't know if I'm answering the question. I'm more so just sort of criticizing the idea that there are people. Like I don't see what the argument is for that.
How would it affect your life if there was an argument for it?
Well, I don't think that there is a need to be alive. It's also presupposing some stuff there. I mean, like, does anyone have some type of argument that there are people? It's like if no one has an argument, I'm sort of I'm fine with that.
The question is would the world change tomorrow if we answered yes or no?
Well, now you're assuming there's like a we and a world and change and stuff.
All right. Well.
Yeah, I mean, like, you sort of need to sort of like, I guess, like dial it back with the presuppositions there.
Can we speak without making at least one presupposition?
What's the word you used after can?
Exactly.
Yep, that's right.
So what do you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, you just used the term you. There isn't a me.
Art thou discusses? I don't know. That was
I've been
supposed to be
talking
a
to
joke.
myself the whole time, apparently. That's fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Let's bring back up the other guy who was up here.
Cartesian.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up, more fan.
Oh yeah, what's going on?
Hey, long time no see.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you were, so I guess you couldn't deal with the sort of Freudian charge over there. Yeah.
I mean, it's a fun conversation at times, but like, I mean, it's well, what's the point of talking about it sometime? I mean, it just doesn't seem practical to talk about right now. I'd much rather talk about
fair enough.
Like hear what other people were positing as opposed to trying to prove something.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so what do you guys like? I guess like you guys believe in God or something. Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, we could talk about a God belief. That's not a position that I hold.
Okay. You guys are like atheists too?
I'm an agnostic atheist.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, do you think you guys have some, because I mean, I'm fine with just being agnostic, but when people start, making these kind of robust, positive, substantive, metaphysical, ideological claims, like atheism, I get a bit lost off the train. So, I mean, that's why I don't know if you like claim to have some like argument that God doesn't exist or something.
I don't.
No, I mean, I barely know anything about the world. It'd be hard to make an overarching claim like that.
Okay, so I guess like what sort of things what sort of philosophical topics do you guys sort of wait, are you guys vegan?
We're not.
I'm not. No.
Wait, you guys support okay. So do you guys think it's ethical to factory farm animals?
I think there's probably some unethical aspects to it.
Okay, but do you think in like, are you fine with like just even if you were to, remove certain aspects, let's say you had a free range farm, would you still be okay with like farming animals and killing them and like, eating their flesh and stuff?
I think personally at this stage,
can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
Sure.
Cartesian, this is more so about you coming up and explaining what your belief system is.
Yeah. I can do that. Yeah, I believe that it's wrong to fund the animal holocaust. So that's what I was kind of trying to talk about. I know that
Yeah,
might have been
I
hard to
can feel it
decipher,
going
but
there. No, I can feel it. That's fine.
yeah, because I guess
But I
my
also
question would
try to
just
be
be like,
transparent and not just say like only your beliefs. I'll answer questions. I'm just not here to
oh yeah, I can
shove
answer your
stuff down
questions,
people's
but like I
throat.
guess the line I was going there was like, well, I could ask, what's true of animals? If it were to become true of humans, would make you say that you're okay with a human holocaust for food. So one example of things people will say is like, well, you can say, oh, it's intelligence, and I could say, okay, well, if we had like a disabled human, that would commit you to saying that it's okay to open the gates of Auschwitz if humans that were sufficiently disabled were on the outside. So
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting argument. Is that
right.
the main reason why you're vegan?
Yeah. I just I know this is like some crazy view, but like I just prefer not to fund like torture of animals.
Mm-hmm. And what's supporting your belief? I'm assuming that you believe that it's wrong to torture animals, and
Oh yeah, of
what's
course.
supporting that belief that it's wrong to torture animals?
Oh wait, why would there need to be anything to support it? I don't get it. Why can't somebody just adopt some like sort of basic ethical values that like causing suffering to when you have relevant alternatives, you don't need to do it. Causing suffering is wrong in those cases. Maybe they have some sort of general value for the well-being of creatures. Maybe they have some general value for the sentience. Like why would there need to be some further like reason for that? Like that why can't it just be basic, some sort of basic value there?
I think you kind of answered the question there. I think you said that you value the well-being of animals. I think that's kind of what I was looking for an answer.
No, yeah. Oh, you're okay. Oh, you think okay? Yeah, if that's a sufficient answer, fine, whatever. Yeah, okay. I was just saying, like, ultimately, I think there's just going to be some sort of like basic values that we tend to set, and I don't see it, and I don't think there need to be some further reason because the values just would be sort of basic in that way.
Gotcha. How do we determine what values we should hold and which values perhaps we don't want to hold?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I don't. So when you say how do you determine which ones we should hold, I take the should there to be something that's value relative. So if you say like, well, which value I should hold, it depends on, that will just turn on the values that you already have. It's kind of like it'll just go in a circle. So it's almost like a strange question to ask because in principle, like if I'm asking, okay, which value should I hold? It just turn on the goals I have. So if I have goals and the goals I have will also just turn on the values I already have. So simply, you already kind of start with these kind of values, and then with regards to the values like you should have, more specific values, they'll just kind of be derivative from values that you already start with. And if you ask like, how do you determine which values you start with? Well, I don't know if that's determined, but I could give like a causal explanation for those sort of things. But I have to go, by the way. But you should bring up this Goons and Heinger guy because he can kind of talk more about. He has a lot of interesting stuff to say. I've spoken to him before, but I got to get off now because I'm getting a phone call.
All right. See ya.
All right, thanks for coming up.
We do have a couple more minutes, so I think we can bring up. I don't know, that guy who left and then came back. Is that who he was talking about?
Yeah, that's who he was talking about.
I think that's fair.
Excuse
since
me.
He had his hand up a little while ago.
Hello.
You're back. What's up?
Yeah, what's going on, man?
So, what do you want to talk about?
I guess we could just build off of that previous conversation about like vegan ethics or whatever, because I hold to vegan ethics.
Okay, cool. So what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think it's wrong to kill and eat animals for pleasure.
Okay, wrong to kill animals for pleasure, for taste pleasure, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you arrive at this conclusion?
It was more of like a sort of, I guess, revelation from God.
Oh. Okay. Supported by a belief in God. You want?
I'm not sure what you mean by believe. Do you mean like I know God?
I may
because I mean you know God too.
Okay, I don't think I misunderstood you. I thought I did. You want to kind of walk me down this path because I don't see the connection initially here.
The connection between what?
Between I think you said, I don't remember exactly what you said. Something about a god and believing in it's wrong to kill animals for taste pleasure. Can you help me connect those two ideas?
Yeah, so I guess like one day, and by the way, I do believe that you believe in God too. I just think that you sort of lie about that when you said you didn't believe in God earlier. But yeah, so like one day I was like eating steak or whatever, and I had this sort of sickness, and after that, I just took that to be like some sort of revelation from God that I shouldn't be doing this, and then I sort of, I guess, pontificated on whether or not it's like ethical.
So the revelation of sorts was more of a jumping pad to the actual convincing, or do you think that was you wouldn't have, that was required for you to come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I think it was like sort of a necessary stepping stone for me to believe that. Yeah, for sure, I agree with that.
Do you think other people require that same kind of revelation to get to your position?
Well, I don't think it needs to be required. I think that you already have that revelation. I mean, are you denying that like the God, like the triune Christian God, is going to be like revelatory?
I just need to understand what it means. Like, imagine you meet my friend 2-Day David back here. He was born yesterday, and I mean, he doesn't have any experiences before, and he chokes on some lettuce, or he gets food poisoning for some lettuce. Would that be a sign to him for him to adjust his life regarding lettuce?
What do you mean a sign?
Like a revelation. Like, I mean, what does revelation mean? How is that different than something else?
Oh, it would. So it's more of this sort of like, and I don't know why you're like posturing like you don't know this. I mean, you obviously believe in God, but it's just sort of this like I would even sort of rack it into this sort of primitive notion, such that it's sort of inexpressible by words, but you can easily identify it, with firsthand experience.
If two people have a firsthand experience and they attribute it to two different gods, how could 2-Day David know who's correct?
Well, one would be lying and the other one wouldn't be lying. So that's the distinction. And you would know that you're lying because you know that God exists. Are you denying that everyone knows that God exists?
No, imagine you're a third person. Imagine you're David and you don't have any experiences. You just met these two people, and they both had the same experience. They both got food poisoning off a steak, but one said it was a revelation from one God, and the other one says a revelation from another God.
And the one that's not saying it's the triune Christian God, if not both, would be lying.
But how would you be able to tell? Like, what's the method to get to that conclusion?
And yeah, so I guess this would just be, a sort of tracking error on your end. And I don't know if you just heard me, but I said that it would be a primitive notion such that it's inexpressible, I guess, via mouth sounds, but, absolutely identifiable via firsthand experience.
I want you to try to explain that one more time.
Do you know what like a primitive notion is?
Let's pretend I was born yesterday.
Okay. Well, I mean, presumably you'd have to be, especially if you're having these conversations and you haven't heard of this yet. But again, I think that my sort of definition was good enough, which is just to say that you can sort of have this, you can sort of have this experience firsthand, but not be able to express it via mouth sounds.
Okay, so you have a feeling that you can't express, but via mouth sounds.
Not necessarily, no. But you can absolutely identify firsthand, yeah.
And that feeling is very specific.
Yeah, obviously it'd be specific, yeah.
how do we get from a feeling that is specific that
Mhm.
you say is very apparent that it is the triune God? How do you get from that specific feeling to the triune God then?
What do you mean? How do you get to? That's the experience. What do you mean? How do you get from one to the other?
I mean, how does an experience describe that?
It would be tautological with the experience. You are experiencing that experience. I'm not sure what even. I mean, maybe you need to be a little bit more specific with your question there.
I mean, how do you know your attribution is correct? How do you know you're not mistaken in your attribution of the experience?
Well, the experience is self-evident. That's how you would know it's not incorrect. And I'm not even sure what's your account of knowledge there when you're asking the question. You don't know? You didn't know what question you were asking there?
I feel like you're being a little obtuse to the situation in which we're trying to understand you and as opposed to arguing.
That's a bold accusation.
Well, I'm making the bold accusation. There it is.
Now you're getting a little bit aggressive on me.
I am.
I'd like to step in for a sec.
Be nice, Goon.
This is going to be a little bit of a different thing to say. I've been trying to practice what's called nonviolent communication, and sometimes I feel really silly when I'm trying to practice such a thing. So bear with me for just a second here. So I kind of observed that you were saying that we were kind of like, I think, lying about our. I mean, I'm agnostic to a God belief. I'm not going to speak for David. Yeah, so you're saying that we're lying, and that makes me feel really. I feel angry when
you should.
Okay.
You should feel angry that your lie is being exposed. Yeah.
So I'm observing that you're calling us liars, and I feel angry. I feel sad.
It's a really weird way to be expressing anger, but yeah.
It's because I have this need to be heard, and a need for other people to listen to what I'm saying, and to believe me when I say that I believe something, right? And I would like you to not call us liars.
Yeah, in the same way that like somebody on like a murder trial where we have all the possible evidence we would ever need to convict them, and somebody could say the exact same thing that you're saying, right? I just still wouldn't believe them. You're a bold-faced liar, and by virtue a scumbag.
That's true.
So I've observed that.
Okay, hold on. Oh, hold on. Because Goon, right now what you're doing is you're representing PNR, and these guys have been nice enough to come in and do this event, and they've done this a couple of times. So I'm gonna have to stop you, and I'm gonna have to kick you out. Sorry.
I'm still going to talk to him just one more time. I'm going to try. He can stay in the audience. That's fine. But, I observed, an insult at the end there. And, that does make me feel sad. You know what? I'm going to rephrase that. That doesn't cause sadness. I cause my own sadness. I'm going to own those feelings. I made the observation that these insults were said. I feel sad. I have a need to be respected, especially when I'm having these conversations. I take them very seriously, and I like to have productive conversations. I think I'd go so far to say I either have a desire or a need for productive conversations. And if I were to make a request, I would just request for these conversations to be taken seriously and for all parties to be respected.
Well, I'm building muscle in this because I'll admit I got a little insulted, and I shouldn't worry about that kind of troll stuff. I should roll with that. I'm blaming it on being sick. That's it. I got an excuse.
Fair enough.
Because I do want to follow that conversation. That's the problem, and that's what I'm mad about the most. Is I wanted to follow that conversation all the way through, and I just got.
Flustered?
Congested. Yeah.
Congested with the nose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's it.
It can't be easy, David. Like, you're sick and you're getting back on your feet, and you're allowed to have these moments. So I think you handled yourself fine.
Cool. And yeah, it's fun. I mean, a lot of the internet discussions out there is, especially in like Discord and debate stuff, is the goal is to kind of get your other opponent to trip up. The goal is to hit them with waves of talk to try to get them to stumble, because stumbling and stuff is a loss in the debate. But we're not trying to have debates as much as we're trying to understand things. We're trying to help other people understand how to get from point A to point Z and people's beliefs. Even if we disagree with them, we want to help understand how clear, like, what their path is, so we can actually talk about how we discuss these things, how we can get better communications, how we can have actual conversations on these things, as opposed to just trying to win in a language game. So that's why, I mean, that's what we're trying to do a little different, is get a little less debate, less about tripping each other up, and more actually getting all the way through the things. So thanks for listening to my TED Talk.
100%, David. And at the end there, when I was attempting nonviolent communication and stumbling upon my words greatly, my purpose of doing that was I was trying to connect with him. I wasn't trying to scold him, yell at him, do any of those things, which I could have done. I could have gotten very angry and could have said, "You have no right to say that, blah, 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 blah." But I don't think that would have been productive. Much like how David was saying, we want to get from point A to point Z and not trip each other up. In much of the same way, I was simply trying to connect with him and hopefully help him see it from my perspective. And if I had accomplished that, I think we could have continued that conversation in a cordial way, hopefully. Unfortunately, we didn't really have that opportunity, but that was kind of my goal at that point.
I'm sorry. I
and my
had to
thing
get
is,
rid of him.
I get
that's
it.
fine. I totally understand. Not a problem.
And I mean, I just think it's ineffective there's a million people in the world who are trying to trip people up with wordplay. But I mean, a lot of the kind of conversation, I mean, if they want to feel embarrassed about their belief being illogical, whatever, they'll watch a YouTube video. But if we're having a discussion with people, we have the opportunity to actually get forward and find missing pieces and put in those missing pieces, find the detours in our brain. So I just think his strategy is not efficient, personally.
All right. I think this might be a time to start wrapping it up. Snow, if you have that link handy to the after show, if you want to drop that in the chat for me, that would be super awesome. Speaking of that, we're going to be having, I don't know if you might want to just go to bed with that cold. Like, let's be real here. So I don't know if you're going to make it, but I will be in the little after show over on the Compassionate Epistemology server. I'm going to wait till, well, actually, I can probably just
I got it.
roll.
I'm sorry.
You got it?
I just have to pull it real quick.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
everybody's got their hand up. We'll try to do another call-in show next week, either here or in the politics server or who knows where else. But we'll have to catch you next time.
Yep. So I guess with that being said, peace out. Oh, actually, Snow, that was the wrong one.
Sorry.
It's all good. Let me grab it, and
If you just send it to, I don't know if it'll let you do it, but it'll let me.
yeah.
So
Yep,
just send it to me and I'll make sure I put it in. I want to thank you guys too personally for coming out again and doing this show. I always enjoy this. You guys are more than welcome to come out anytime you want. I absolutely support what you guys are doing and love learning all this. And we really hope that you guys will come out and do it again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll be back, right, David?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we will be back.
Beat this cold.
All right, I think I'm going to play the outro on YouTube. see you YouTube guys later. You're welcome to come to the after show as well. And Snow's gonna drop. And Snow's gonna drop that. I'm fumbling all over the controls. And Snow's gonna drop that link. So see everybody on YouTube later, and hopefully some people in the after party. There.